Cami's situation in Landman Season 2 raises one of the most uncomfortable questions the show has asked so far. Does she truly understand who she's in business with? Or is her ego blocking her from hearing what Tommy has been trying to warn her about all along? The answer isn't clean, and that's exactly why her arc feels so real. Cami isn't naive, but she's also not as insulated from her own pride as she believes. What we're watching isn't ignorance. It's a collision between intelligence, fear, and ego. On one level, yes, Cami absolutely knows who Gallino is. She's not blind to his reputation, his tactics, or the trail of wreckage he leaves behind. The show goes out of its way to establish that Cami is one of the smartest people in the room. She reads contracts closely, understands leverage, and sees the risks long before they become public disasters. So the idea that she's just being fooled by Gallino doesn't really hold up. She knows he's dangerous. She knows his money comes with strings. She knows that people don't partner with him and walk away clean. The problem is that Cami believes she's different. That belief is where ego starts creeping in. Cami has spent her entire career being the person who manages chaos. She fixes messes other people create. She anticipates fallout and contains it. Over time, that builds a quiet confidence that can easily slide into overconfidence. When Tommy warns her about Gallino, Cami doesn't hear concern. She hears doubt. And to someone like her, doubt feels insulting. It feels like being told she can't handle something she's already calculated 10 steps ahead. Tommy's warnings also hit a nerve because of their history. He isn't just a colleague. He's someone who used to trust her judgment completely. As their partnership fractures, his concerns start sounding, to Cami, like second-guessing. That's important. If these same warnings were coming from someone else, she might take them more seriously. But coming from Tommy, they feel loaded with unresolved tension, disappointment, and control. Cami starts reacting not to the substance of what he's saying, but to what she thinks it represents. This is where ego really takes over. Instead of asking, what if Tommy's right? The question becomes, why won't Tommy trust me? And once the issue shifts from strategy to identity, listening becomes almost impossible. Admitting Gallino is too dangerous would also mean admitting that Tommy's caution has value, and that's something Cami isn't emotionally ready to concede. There's also the fact that Gallino validates her in ways Tommy no longer does. Gallino listens. He doesn't interrupt her concerns or frame them as obstacles. He uses them. He turns her caution into strategy. That's incredibly seductive to someone who feels sidelined. Even though Gallino's validation is transactional and self-serving, it still feels like respect. And when someone feels unheard for long enough, they'll take recognition wherever they can get it, even if it's poisoned. But knowing someone is dangerous and fully understanding the depth of that danger are two different things. Cami understands Gallino on a professional level, but she underestimates him on a personal one. She believes she can manage him through competence, preparation, and leverage. What she hasn't fully accepted is that Gallino doesn't play the same game. He doesn't need to outthink her. He just needs to outlast her. And that's where Tommy's warnings carry weight Cami refuses to acknowledge. Tommy has seen what Gallino does to people who believe they're partners instead of tools. His fear isn't theoretical. It's experiential. But because Tommy is struggling in his own role, because his authority is slipping, Cami doesn't see him as a reliable messenger anymore. His instability makes his insight easier to dismiss. In her mind, she's not ignoring wisdom. She's compensating for weakness. Ego also shows up in Cami's belief that she's acting rationally while everyone else is emotional. She frames her decisions as pragmatic, necessary, and unavoidable. Tommy's resistance gets labeled as sentimental or outdated. That framing protects her self-image. As long as she believes she's the only one willing to do what's necessary, she doesn't have to question whether those necessities are being defined by fear instead of strategy. And fear is absolutely part of this. Cami is afraid of losing relevance, power, and control. Aligning with Gallino feels like staying ahead of the collapse instead of being crushed by it. Walking away would mean trusting a system that has already started pushing her out. Ego and fear work together here. Fear says, you can't afford to hesitate. Ego says, You're smart enough to survive this." Together, they silence doubt. What makes this storyline so compelling is that the show doesn't portray Cami as a villain for ignoring Tommy. It portrays her as someone making decisions under pressure while protecting her sense of self. Listening to Tommy wouldn't just mean changing course. It would mean admitting she might be wrong, vulnerable, or overextended. For someone who has built an identity around competence and control, that admission is terrifying. The tragedy is that Cami and Tommy are actually talking past each other. Tommy is warning her about Gallino as a force of destruction. Cami is defending her ability to manage risk. They're not disagreeing on facts, they're disagreeing on confidence. Tommy doubts the system can be controlled. Cami doubts that stepping away is survivable. So does Cami really know who she's in business with? Yes, in theory, but not fully in practice. She understands Gallino's reputation, but she hasn't yet experienced the moment where his interests turn directly against hers. And is ego stopping her from listening to Tommy? Partially, but it's an ego born from survival, not arrogance. It's the ego of someone who believes that if she stops believing in her own intelligence, everything she's built will collapse. Season 2 is clearly setting up a reckoning. Either Cami will realize that knowing who Gallino is doesn't mean she can control him, or Tommy will be proven wrong in ways that cost him everything. The tension comes from the fact that both outcomes feel possible. And that uncertainty is exactly what Landman does best, forcing smart, capable people into situations where intelligence alone isn't enough to save them.